I wasn't trying to start a neighborhood-wide revolution. I just wanted to hang an American flag outside my damn house. It wasn't some massive Vegas-style LED monstrosity, blaring USA, USA every time someone walked by. It was a simple, respectable 3 by 5 foot flag, neatly mounted on a pole by my front porch. I had served my country, done my time, and this was my home. It seemed like the most natural thing in the world. Then came Karen. Now, if you've ever lived in an HOA-run neighborhood, you already know the type. The self-appointed dictator of lawn heights, mailbox colors, and apparently, patriotism. Karen, the HOA president, was a middle-aged woman with a permanent scowl, a clipboard that she wielded like a medieval battle axe, and the unshakable belief that she was the main character in everyone's lives. And lucky me, I had just become her new project. She showed up at my door on a Tuesday morning. I had barely taken a sip of my coffee when I heard the dreaded double knock, sharp, authoritative, and filled with the smug energy of someone who lives to ruin your day. I opened the door. There she stood, arms crossed, lips pursed so tightly I half expected her to inhale her own face. "Good morning," she said, in the tone of someone who clearly hoped I wasn't having one. "Morning," I replied, already bracing for impact. Her eyes flicked up to the flag, and then back to me. "We have a problem." Ah, there it was. No pleasantries, no warm-up. Straight to the HOA nonsense. A problem? I asked, taking a deliberately slow sip of my coffee. "Looks like a flag to me." Karen gave a tight, condescending smile, the kind that screamed, "I don't have a real job, but I have the power to fine you into oblivion." "The HOA has aesthetic standards," she said, gesturing toward the clipboard like it was the 10 Commandments. "And this," she pointed dramatically at my flag, "is not in compliance." I stared at her for a long second, trying to figure out if she had actually just said that. The American flag doesn't meet HOA aesthetic standards? "That's correct," she said, as if she had just delivered an objective fact, like water is wet or Karen is the worst. Now, here's the thing, I knew my rights. I knew damn well that my flag was protected by the Freedom to Display the American Flag Act of 2005. But I also knew that arguing with Karen was like arguing with a raccoon over a trash can. It wouldn't change anything, and you just end up covered in garbage. So, I went with a different tactic. I smiled. "Well, that's just unpatriotic, Karen." She stiffened. "Excuse me. I mean, I'd hate for anyone to think the HOA is against the American flag. That would be a terrible look, wouldn't it?" A flicker of uncertainty crossed her face. For a second, I thought she might back off. She did not. "You have 24 hours to remove it," she snapped, scribbling something on her clipboard. "Or you'll be fined." And just like that, the war began. The next morning, I woke up to a bright orange notice taped to my door like some kind of eviction warning. HOA violations usually came in polite little envelopes, but no, Karen had clearly decided that my flag was a full-scale crisis. I peeled the paper off and read it. Violation, unauthorized display. Fine, $100 per day until removed. Oh, it was on. Now, let me be clear. $100 a day wasn't pocket change, but I wasn't about to let some power-tripping suburban overlord tell me I couldn't hang a flag outside my own house. So, I did the logical thing. I marched straight over to Karen's house. She answered the door like she had been expecting me. Same pursed lips, same clipboard, same aura of self-importance. "Morning, Karen," I said, waving the violation notice like a winning lottery ticket. She barely looked at it. "Have you removed the flag?" "Nope." "Then the fine stands." I let out a low whistle. $100 a day, huh? That's impressive. I didn't realize the HOA had its own little extortion ring. Karen's expression didn't even twitch. "It's not extortion. It's enforcement." I folded my arms. "Right. And which exact HOA rule says I can't display the American flag?" Her eyes flickered, just for a split second. She had nothing. "It disrupts the uniform aesthetic of the neighborhood," she said finally. I blinked. You mean like that guy down the street with a 12-foot inflatable Santa still sitting on his lawn? In March. That's seasonal decor. So, what if I tell you this flag is my seasonal decor? 'Cause, you know, America. Karen's jaw clenched so tight I thought she might snap a tooth. The fine stands. Now, at this point, I could have lawyered up. I could have thrown the law in her face. But no, this wasn't about legality anymore. This was about something far more important, petty vengeance. I smiled. All right, Karen. You have yourself a nice day. And then I walked away, whistling. First stop. My old buddy, Channel 6 News. See, I'd spent enough time in this town to know that local news stations lived for petty suburban drama. Give them a slow news day, and they'll turn Man Feeds Ducks at Park into a 3-part investigative special. So, I made a call. And hoo boy, did they bite. By the next morning, a full-blown news crew was parked outside my house. Camera guys, a reporter, the whole 9 yards. And guess who just happened to be on her morning power walk when the cameras started rolling? That's right. Karen. She froze like a deer in headlights. The reporter, God bless her, immediately zeroed in. Ma'am, are you with the HOA? Karen blinked. I could see the internal panic. The mental calculations. The realization that she could not look like the villain on live TV. I'd love for you to clarify, the reporter pressed, shoving a microphone in Karen's face. Is it true the HOA is fining a veteran for displaying an American flag? And that's when Karen made a critical mistake. She squared her shoulders, lifted her chin, and doubled down. Well, she said, in that condescending voice people use when they're about to say something stupid, rules are rules. Oh, honey. You could practically feel the shift in the air. Across the street, a neighbor actually gasped. And me? I just stood there, arms crossed, watching the magic happen. By that evening, my face was all over social media. HOA fines veteran for American flag. Local man stands up to HOA tyranny. Karen hates freedom. Okay, maybe not the last one. But it was implied. And the best part? The next morning, when I stepped outside, I wasn't the only one with a flag anymore. Karen must have thought she won when she hit me with those fines. She probably pictured me breaking under the weight of her HOA dictatorship, begging for mercy as I ripped my flag down in shame. What she didn't expect. A full-blown neighborhood revolution. See, after my story hit the local news, people started reaching out. First, it was just a few neighbors, good folks who saw the interview and thought, well, that's some grade A bullshit. Then, it was veterans. A lot of veterans. The first one to show up was Bill, a retired Marine who lived 3 streets over. He knocked on my door the next morning, holding a brand new American flag. Heard you were catching hell for this, he said, handing it to me. Figured I'd throw mine up too. Before I could even thank him, Tom, an Air Force vet from the next block, pulled up in his truck. His tailgate was down, and it was filled with flags. You mind if I put some up around the neighborhood? He asked casually, like he wasn't about to start a grassroots revolution. And that's when I knew. This was no longer just my fight. By noon, the entire street was covered in flags. Driveways. Porches. Fences. Even mailboxes had little mini flags stuck to them. It was like the 4th of July threw up all over the place, and it was beautiful. But the best part? The veterans kept coming. By the end of the day, at least 30 guys had shown up, all in support. Some were neighbors I didn't even know were vets. Others had driven in from other HOA neighborhoods, just to make a point. Karen? Oh, she was seething. She stormed down the street with her clipboard of doom, scribbling fines left and right, but there was just one little problem. She had no idea who half these houses belonged to. At one point, she actually stopped in front of my next-door neighbor's house, an Army vet named Greg. You need to remove that, she snapped, pointing at the flag on his fence. Greg took a long sip of his beer and said, Ma'am, this is my property, and you can kindly FCK off. I swear I saw her, I twitch. By day 3 of Flag Dawn 2025, Karen had reached full meltdown mode. She called an emergency HOA meeting, which of course, I wasn't invited to. But you know who was? Bill, Tom, Greg, and about 10 other veterans. Karen barely got a word in before half the HOA board turned on her. "Do you have any idea how bad this looks?" one of them hissed, holding up his phone. "We're all over the news. This is unacceptable." Karen shrieked. "They're violating HOA rules." Bill leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. "Which rule, exactly?" Karen opened her mouth, then closed it. Because guess what? There was no actual rule against flags. She had just decided she didn't like them. The room went dead silent. Then one of the board members, a lady I barely knew, sighed and rubbed her temples. "We can't keep fining people for this. We'll be sued into the ground." Karen's face went beet red. And that's when the HOA president himself turned to her and said the words that made my entire week. "Karen, you're fired." The next morning, the fines were dropped. The flags? Still up. Karen? Now just another bitter neighbor without a clipboard. And me? I enjoyed the most satisfying cup of coffee of my life, sitting on my porch, under my flag. Game. Set. Match. Thank you for listening to this story about Karen and Flag Dawn 2025. Please share in the comments where you are from and if you enjoyed it, and see you next time.